Dear BalkanPod listeners, I'm Dilek KÜTÜK from Turkey. In this episode, we're gonna talk about the Regional Youth Cooperation Office, RYCO, with its first Secretary General, Mr. Đuro Blanuša. Before working in RYCO, he was a senior advisor in the sector for international cooperation and European integration in the Ministry of Youth and Sports of the Republic of Serbia. As some of you know, RYCO is an organization which has come as a result of Berlin process. During the Western Balkan Summit in Vienna in 2015, the Prime Ministers of Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Montenegro and Serbia have signed a joint declaration on the establishment of Regional Youth Cooperation Office. RYCO is an initiative to support youth project and establishing new relations among the young people in the Western Balkans. It promotes fostering reconciliation and it supports intercultural learning, regional mobility, cooperation and tolerance. That's why the role of Mr. Blanuša as a first Secretary General of RYCO was very important. After the 4-year mandate of Mr. Blanuša ended, on this April 3rd, Mr. Albertani started his job as a new Secretary General of RYCO. I wish him success for the new term and now started to talk with Mr. Blanuša about what he did in his very difficult first term. Dear Đuro Blanuša, welcome to BalkanPod.
Nice to see you. At least nice to hear you.
Thank you. It's really great honor to host you here as the first Secretary General of RYCO. So I'm very happy you did not offend me and accepted my invitation. I know you're currently very busy, so thank you.
You're more than welcome. I look forward to this interview.
You know, the Regional Youth Cooperation Office promotes the cooperation between youth in the Western Balkan region through exchange programs, projects, etc. Your 4-year mandate as a Secretary General of RYCO has just been completed. And I would like to ask, how was this first term for both you and RYCO when you did a retrospective evaluation?
Big thanks for the question. And sometimes when I'm joking about the work that we have done in last, not only 4, I also took part in the process of RYCO establishment within this interesting working group founded and constituted in 2015 out of governmental and civil society representatives. From time to time, when I was looking back to the process of RYCO's establishment, and especially when we started our operations in Tirana, in Albania, where the RYCO head office is headquartered, I was saying that even if we decided to establish RYCO in Scandinavia or anywhere else around the globe where the things are more quiet and more predictable, I think we would face a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. But to decide to establish RYCO in the Western Balkans, to decide to establish RYCO in the headquarters in Albania, I think it was nothing but adventure. But after all, I think it's more than successful adventure. It's not on me to make that assessment, but looking back and taking into consideration all different obstacles, all different challenges that we have faced in last 4 or 5 years, I think that we in RYCO, and I'm really using the word we, not me, but us, the people that joined me and my colleagues in the team, not only in Tirana, but across the Western Balkan region, can be really proud about what has been done.
I know RYCO and I know what it does, etc. I wrote small op-ed about it, actually. But I don't know your personal view. I think you can clearly express your own opinion due to the fact that your responsibility is over. And how would you define RYCO's place in your career?
Well, if it's about my personal career, then I might even say I'm done. So I don't need any kind of additional social recognition personally. Even in the career-wise, I think this was not only a dream job, but this is something where you are really exposed to the very high level, social environment. I had opportunity to discuss the European leaders with the regional leaders. I had that privilege to lead the team of the great people from all over the Western Balkans. We also had volunteers coming from France, coming from different places in the Western Balkans and beyond. So there is no reason for me to sound formal or official. I can be really open in this. I mean, for me, this was career-wise the best time ever. I was exposed to the huge level of expectations. It was a super stressful job, but perhaps it was, I guess, naive to even believe at the beginning that this is going to be an easy job. being beautiful and nice does not mean that this was an easy job. So it was very, very complicated since the day one. And until my last day, I'm now in this handover period with the onboarding of the new Secretary General, but being the first one that takes a lot of, let's say, privileges and a lot of positive social feedback, but also takes a lot of stress, a lot of challenges that you need to deal with. You are really building things from the scratch. And just to be also quite honest with you, maybe political support or political disputes that are still going on in the Western Balkan regions, I really thought that RYCO is going to be able to be the part of the solution and that not to be ever, never instrumentalized. But also we have had a situation when even our organization was instrumentalized for some bilateral disputes. I guess that we are going to come there. I don't want to now reveal all the juicy details.
You talk about the political atmosphere in the Balkans. A little bit you gave us some information. Have you ever experienced any problems or challenges caused by politicians? Because, these kinds of platform like RYCO need the help of governments, politicians, leaders, etc.
First of all, RYCO was established and at the very beginning was and still is inspired by German-France reconciliation process that started immediately after the Second World War. Franco-German Youth Office, which was established within the Elysee Treaty in 1963, was a kind of role model for us. And it was very important to have this kind of inspiration or role model. You cannot just copy-paste, of course, their experience because RYCO is about 6, as we call them, contracting parties. I'm even not allowed to call them countries because we have out of 6 contracting parties, we have Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia that do not recognize independence of Kosovo. And Kosovo is the equal contracting party, equal participant of the not only the process of RYCO establishment, but now in the governing board, we do have representatives coming from Kosovo. So RYCO was established as a mechanism that should foster a reconciliation process in the Western Balkan region. And if you want to kick off this interview with something which is the good basis for it, then we need to, first of all, acknowledge that we are not there yet. So the Western Balkan societies are not there yet. And there are some good examples of coexistence. There are some good examples of good cross-community dialogue, but real reconciliation is rather on the level of the incident. And we should acknowledge this. And this is not something to make us pessimistic or skeptical. This is something that should drive us to be even more decisive to support initiatives like RYCO. And on top of that, I'm not sure that our societies do really understand what reconciliation really means. I'm not sure that our societies are able still, more than 2 decades after the wars in 90s, are still able to deal with the past, that our societies are still missing this culture of remembrance. And finally, when it comes to justice and truth, I'm afraid that there are countries in the region, there are individuals in the regions that would rather hinder and would rather look on the other side or the other way and would rather follow still quite vocal national and nationalistic or extreme right narratives. So what still prevails in the Western Balkans, it's still the narrative of us and them. And as long as this narrative prevails, I think that we are not going to be able, even with the great initiatives like RYCO, to really change the landscape of the entire region. Also, for some participants or contracting parties of RYCO, the reconciliation was quite confusing to consume. I mean, Albania has not took part in the wars in 90s. So when we are talking with young people from Albania, then they are really asking me or asking themselves with whom actually we're supposed to reconcile. But it's more than just being and taking part in the war. It is about combating the huge level and the high level of prejudice and stereotypes. Because when you ask young people in Albania about, for example, young people in Serbia, you would see that 2 out of 3 young people over there have the negative attitudes against their peers, for example, in Serbia. And vice versa. If you ask young people in Serbia about Albania or Albanians, you would see that even among young people, there is a super high level, alarming high level of the stereotypes and prejudice. And this is exactly the reason why RYCO has been established. And this is exactly why we are proud on the thousands or even now more than 10,000 of young people that has been exchanged through our youth mobility programs. But this is just the beginning of one big marathon, instead of maybe expectations that within this first mandate and being the first Secretary General supposed to run the sprint race. It's not about the sprint race. It's really about the marathon that just started.
I actually really agree what you said about the region. And I would like to ask that in your term, how much have you been capable of raising the awareness of youth that they can play an important role in the Balkan politics, social and economic life? Or maybe I should firstly ask that, do you believe that these kinds of initiative, platform like RYCO, contribute the future of youth and general atmosphere in the Balkans?
I will start from the first part of the question about how capable and how successful we were in raising awareness. I think that we had to do more. And I think that we could do more, but taking into account that it was just the first 4 years and that we had to invest a lot of time and energy into administrative setup of the organization. I mean, I don't want to bother you in this interview with some details on how difficult for us was to start our work in Albania. And for example, for myself, I was 6 months without the salary, without the office, without the laptop, without the bank account. So, and people tend to believe that RYCO started its work on the day when the agreement was signed in Paris in 2016 on the 4th of July. But actually, we started more than 1 year after that. And I was appointed in April 2017, also with a 2-month delay, again, because of the political dispute within the governing board. But at the end of the day, finally, I was appointed and I started as a one-man show. That took 4 or 5 months. And then I was creating and I was establishing this team with this first round of recruitment, and we started as an organization of 6-7 people. Nowadays, we are almost 60, which still does not mean anything. It's not about just number of staff. It's also very much about our performances and what could be done in the last 3 or 3 years and a half. And just to clarify, so I think we lost a lot of time, not lost, but we had to invest that time to set up the organization. And then we were that brave, maybe even crazy, to even launch the first open call, because the philosophy, at least of RYCO within my mandate, was to support organizations and schools on the ground. I believe that the region is already fed up with different policies and different kind of papers or non-papers. It was not about organizing conferences and seminars. It was really about how to give opportunity to civil society organizations and high schools in the region to actually draft and implement the projects of the youth mobility, youth exchanges, and how to promote intercultural learning as a method that can bring young people together. So it could be done much more, but given and taking into account the fact that we spend at least 50% of our energy on the organizational setup, I can say that I'm pretty much satisfied with the results. I believe that my successor is going to have the much better conditions to really scale up the visibility of RYCO, to scale up and to make much more exchanges and participants of these programs.
I'm wondering now, is there any project you wish you had done? Or which are some of the major projects carried by RYCO in your term, like the best one?
I would not be able to say there is the best one. I think that all projects RYCO is doing are super relevant. Again, one step back, it was really hard and challenging to communicate the purpose of RYCO. When you have that label, that name, Regional Youth Cooperation Office, people or different stakeholders tend to believe that RYCO should deal with everything with regard to youth. So youth unemployment should be addressed by RYCO. Education reforms should be addressed by RYCO. Somehow it was really one of the biggest challenges in these first 4 years to communicate what is the real purpose of RYCO. And then when you explain what is the real purpose of RYCO, that it is about youth exchanges, it is about fostering reconciliation and to promote this constructive dealing with the past, then there were some people that were literally, even media, withdrawing, and also young people. Let's admit that even young people in the region, and we have evidences, and it's not me now just talking, we have evidences that young people and the youth organizations and high schools were not really that much into the dealing with the past topic and the reconciliation and the culture of remembrance. I would say that in between 5 and 10% of the projects and I'm talking now about the good quality projects, were about what we have expected and what we have drafted as our mission and the goals and objectives of our first 3 years strategic plan. Other, even 80 or 90% were about other different topics, which are all super relevant. Let me acknowledge that, which are all super relevant, But the real purpose of RYCO is more, and should be about reconciliation, not really about employability of young people. However, it was impossible just to reject all those good project ideas. What we have done is to somehow inspire them to find a regional implication or to see what are maybe secondary outcomes of these kind of projects. Okay, you can deal with enhancing young people's skills to be more competitive on the labor market with some social innovations, youth entrepreneurship, or even sustainable development. This is a very interesting topic. But, we acknowledged after these 3 or 4 years that we can also go beyond the usual scope of our mandate. And then actually through these kind of programs that I mentioned, employability, entrepreneurship, ecology, and sustainable development, that we can actually address also reconciliation, youth cooperation, and intercultural learning also through tackling these different areas. So as long as the projects are diverse in terms of participants, as long as we have participants coming from different parts of the Western Balkans, as long as we are bringing them together and they are overcoming those prejudices, we believe that there is a very, very strong impact on what we would like to achieve.
Okay, you talk about the reconciliation, sustainability, entrepreneurship, which are really great things in the Balkans. But on Twitter, I read a tweet written by one graduated journalist. And he wrote that, "I'm tired of the trainings project in the Balkans. I want a real job." I think it's true because some of my friends still make money from temporary projects. They are unable to find a permanent or long-term job. Maybe this is not the RYCOs work, but I would like to ask that, what did you do, or what is RYCO doing to overcome youth unemployment?
No, I fully understand your calling, and I partially agree, but this is exactly what we need to manage expectations towards RYCO. So we are not established there to substitute the lazy work or the inability of the government to really, we are not established to give employment opportunity to young people, So we have to be very clear on that. So this is the message for the government, that they are not doing the great work in terms of their economies and employment policies. RYCO was not established for that. RYCO was established, and as I said at the beginning, being inspired by the Franco-German Youth Office, where after the Second World War, maybe our societies are still not aware how big was the hate in between people in France and Germany. So what we have seen, what we are seeing now is the European Union. We can see, first of all, harmony over there. But trust me, even nowadays, there is a huge level of prejudice and stereotypes, even the hatred, believe it or not. So, but what, for example, Franco-German Youth Office made, the millions of young people had for the first time opportunity to travel abroad and to meet those big enemies, not only Second World War enemies. So France and Germany have been fighting each other for centuries. And there was a really hate in between. But then through different methods, different methodology, through intercultural learning, these young generations had opportunity to see that their neighbors are not enemies. And this is exactly what RYCO should do, but it's going to take time. So to give opportunity to young people, for example, from north of Serbia to go for the first time maybe in Kosovo, people from North Bosnia to go for the first time in Albania. They never had that opportunity. And vice versa, for the people in Albania to really come for the first time. We had examples and testimonies of our young participants. There was one young teenager girl from Niš, which is in the South Serbia. She was going for the first time in Sarajevo, in Bosnia. So first of all, she had to really fight with her parents to let her go. So let's not forget how much parents are also driving young people's minds, and especially with these conservative attitudes. So she had to really struggle a lot to get their permission to go for the first time in Bosnia. And what she was expecting there is that she was afraid even to speak Serbian, although it's more or less the same language that people are talking. But you can feel the difference in the accent. So she was so under stress. And then when she came back home, she had a totally different viewpoints. And then what she has shared, I mean, this is exactly what is the greatest capacity or what is the real impact of the youth exchange program, this multiplying effect. So when somebody goes with such a high level of prejudice and stereotypes and the negative attitudes, and then coming back with a totally different even mindset. So her capacity to have this multiplying effect of youth exchange programs is incredible. So she can share her good experience with her peers, friends from the classroom, neighbors, parents, and this is what RYCO can do on the long-term run.
Maybe I can ask more, like you can maybe share some another anecdote that impressed you.
There are many. One that I also found quite interesting and I like to share is, I said that courts, I can complain a lot about the government, but also on the other hand, we have been established by the governments. And I think this is a huge step forward and we need to acknowledge that without support, we would not be able even to be here now and to be established. So governments are paying their financial contributions and most of the time they are really constructive, but sometimes when you want to be constructive, you can also overdo the things, And we had one youth exchange in the central part of Serbia with participants from Bosnia and from Kosovo. So Albanian participants from Kosovo. By the way, RYCO is really taking care and we are avoiding ethnocentrical projects. So it was not youth exchange where the young Serbs from central Serbia hosted young Serbs from Kosovo and young Serbs from Bosnia. No, it was totally opposite. Actually, there was young Albanians from Kosovo and then young Bosniaks from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the great project idea and for all these people for the first time being in the, let's say, rural or remote part of Serbia. And then the local mayor, in order to make himself and his town as best host as possible, when this group wanted to go from the youth hostel where they were accommodated to the local kafana, local bar. So he said, nobody is going to touch you. And then he sent 2 police cars to escort the group. So, you can imagine like a group of 25 young people or even 30 going through the city just for a drink, and then there are 2 police cars. So making totally opposite, impression with the best intentions. So he was afraid about, we thanked him, but then we told him, please, it is really not necessary. So these young people already feel quite comfortable here. You don't need, nobody is going to touch anyone coming from Kosovo. Of course, I was that happy, honestly, Dilek, that in these 4 years and after more than 100 youth exchanges, and I think now in between 8,000 and 10,000 participants, we never really had the significant incident or the conflict.
What is your plan after RYCO? What you are planning to do, or maybe it's vacation you plan?
That's long vacation sounds like a great plan, but actually I cannot afford that. For the moment, I'm still considering different options. So the April is for me the handover period. So I'm trying to really focus on passing the most relevant information, even advices and recommendations to my successor. So the April is going to be marked more with my still engagement with RYCO, and then sometime later in the spring, I will get engaged with the different interviews for my future job. So I'm somehow in between. First of all, I want to stay in Belgrade. I was missing Belgrade a lot. I will stay here in Serbia. Family is here, friends are here. And it was more easy for me to make decision where than to make decision what. So for the moment, I make just decision where. So I hope it's going to be Belgrade. And then I will see what I'm going to do. Maybe I would prefer to be a little bit less exposed in terms of my new position, and maybe if I would be able to choose, I would maybe make also the break with working for the government. Maybe I would also think about the plan. But this is just for the moment my thoughts, and I will see what are going to be offered on the labor market.
Dear Đuro, really thank you for all of these stories, opinions, and I'm so thankful for this and hope to see you as soon as possible, and good luck for your new job.
Thanks a lot. Teşekkür. Is it teşekkür?
Yes, exactly. Dear listeners, see you next week, same day and same time.